Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Excuse me. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Today's topic is going to be the best ways to implement pay and charge rules. My name is Austin. I am your host for today, and my role at Parim is I'm the onboarding manager. Some of you, hopefully, that we've worked together to help implement Parim, and some of its features get you going up and running. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to be today's host and go over pay and charge rules with you today. I'm also joined by my colleague, Allo. If you've joined with some of the webinars before, he is also accompanying me. He'll be here to answer your questions live through that little questions and answers section that you should see on your screen. So at any time today, if you have a question with regards to the features or a process or anything like that, in today's webinar, you can certainly use that section and he'll be happy to answer it for you. We are also going to be leaving a little bit time at the end where we will, a little bit just focus on questions and answers. So if it doesn't get answered right away, we will have that a little bit of time to finalize and answer those final questions. Ultimately, if you're just sort of watching and waiting and just sort of soaking in the information, you can always reach out to our support team later on after the webinar or whenever you're starting to use pay and charge rules. Obviously when you're, playing with the system and using the features, that's typically when those questions do pop up because you might have forgotten or whatnot. So you can always reach out to support at a later date. So today we're going to be focusing on the pay and charge rules to help you get that set up within Parim and then ultimately automate your payroll for your staff and then also easily have those charging information for your own clients. Those sort of topics, the features and settings, et cetera, that we're going to be going over today. We believe that this would assist some of the users like yourselves if you are new to Parim and new to the system. Those of you who are new and have not had say like an onboarding experience with myself or with our new self-onboarding material. Those of you who aim to get the most out of your pay and charge rules, your functionalities. Hopefully you will learn something, at least one new piece of information today. That's certainly our goal, and that makes us feel better to know that these are helping individuals like yourselves. That being said, let's just go ahead and start right into it. So, as I mentioned previously, and as you've seen, today's topic is going to be the best ways to implement pay and charge rules within Parim. Today's agenda is we're going to start out with, as the topic is stated, setting up the pay and charge rules. Additionally, we're going to be discussing how you would edit, modify, deleting pay and charge rules, etc. Within that said topic, within that feature, we're going to also be talking about the differences of standard and advanced pay and charge rules. The reason that I state that there is going to be differences on what you have access to depending on your Parim subscription. So if you have a premium level subscription, you're going to be different from our professional and enterprise, et cetera, and moving up, which I'm going to be going over today and showing you exactly how it is. I think this is something we like to include, and we always are happy to discuss it further if you're maybe using that standard package and would like to, be more specific on your pay and charge rules. And then lastly, with regards to the pay and charge rules on that, we're going to talk about pay and charge rules priority. So this is the last step that you would be doing to make sure all that work that you put in setting up those pay and charge rules, that they are being getting used and assigned to your shifts correctly, exactly how you set them up to be. Then we're going to be moving into the pay schedule. This is going to be helping you take those pay and charge rules, those shifts that have been completed, and allows you to pull the using the pay schedule and the pay run, which I'll be discussing further. This would help you get the information that you need, pull it out of Parim, and then import it into your accounting software. That way you can create invoices for your clients if you're using charge rules, and then of course pay out your employees and your staff. The third thing we're going to be going over is that pay run functionality. So there is going to be a lot of features, filters, things to help you get the information that you want in order to get it ready again to release your payroll, to charge your clients, and get your team going. Not just the scheduling and shift management that you might be typically using with Parim, but there's even going further with regards to the payroll. And then, as I mentioned before, with the last bit of time that we're going to be spending today is going to be final questions and answers. So throughout the webinar, today, feel free to use that questions and answers section. And as I mentioned before, if you have any questions that maybe they don't pop up right during the webinar, you can always reach out to our support team through support@parim.com. Or I will show you exactly where it is in a moment. There is a little messenger box right in the right-hand corner whenever you're logged in from the web browser. So that being said, let's go ahead and just get right into creating some pay rules, creating some charge rules, and getting into the features. All right, so when you log into the system, I'm sure you're very much aware, your first thing that you're going to be seeing is the dashboard. What we're going to be focusing on today is the pay and charge dropdown we're seeing right there. So we're going to have pay run, which we're going to spend a few minutes on later today in the webinar. Then we have our pay rules, our charge rules, and then we have holiday pay rules and holiday charge rules. However, we're not going to be focusing on these holiday rules on today's webinar. We're going to be focusing on all the features of pay and charge rules. So let's go ahead and just click on the pay rules, and we'll have those. What we're looking at right now is the pay rules list. So I'm going to go into this in a few moments on how the layout, etc. But we're going to go right into just creating a pay rule. We have our pay rules. So in this case, we're looking at all position-based pay rules. What does that mean? That means that a payroll, a rate has been set up specifically for that position. In this case, steward, or we have a pink position, etc. Of course, excuse some of these, barista. We have some of these that are set up specifically for that position. So let's go ahead and create another one specifically for a position. You can do that by going into the top right corner and clicking on Create Payroll. By clicking on the Create Payroll, it'll open up that menu to then create that payroll that we want to accomplish. One thing that I want to state right now is I'm not going to be going into creating a charge rule. The reason being is it's essentially going to be the exact same setup. However, there's going to be the classification on who that client is going to be that charge rule applies to. However, the layout, the setup for a charge rule is essentially the same view that you're going to be seeing for a payroll. Okay, so starting from the top, and then we'll make our way down. We're going to, of course, have our new payroll. We'll label this as number one, new payroll number one. And then we have, moving down, is the effective dates. Effective dates are the dates at which that payroll is effective. So essentially, if you are starting from scratch on Parim, then your effective date for creating your first pay rules could essentially be today, say. So September 14th. If you are coming into Parim with some historical information, you can set your effective date to previously, so a few months from now, or up to a year, or excuse me, not from now, but previously, a year back, etc. And then you can have that going. Typically, as an onboarding manager, when I'm setting it up for a client and their site, I will typically just set the effective date from the date that I set it up. The other part that we have is the to date. So this is going to be how far into the future does that pay rule continue. So say if you have staff and they are going to get paid 15 an hour, however, or whatnot, there is that minimum wage increase that occurs every year. This is something that needs to be adjusted. So you do not want that individual to continue to be paid the previous minimum wage. So you will then effectively be setting an end date for that, say, 15 an hour And then you'll be creating a new payroll for say 16 an hour or whatever that increases. And you would be, say, this would be the effective dates for a previous one would be September 14th, 2022. The new date would it would end, or sorry, the old date would then end maybe on the 14th of September 2023. We would be creating a new one for the 15th of September 2023. I'm going to be going into modifying and editing or modifying, deleting pay rules in a few moments, but I just want to bring that up and the importance of this. Moving down, then we have those which this pay rule would be applied to. So this is going to be, in this case, what we saw here is this is going to be for positions. We can go ahead and set up a very simple position for this pay rule is going to be only for any sort of shifts that are assigned to a guard, at which we would want to pay this guard, say, we'll place 13 an hour in this case. And then we can have the hourly rate as we see there. But let's going back to what it applies to. You also have the additional options of person, location, client, and employment type. Oh, okay, employment type is okay. Apologies. And then so we'll set the guard and position. So you have that ability to be very specific. Let's say John Smith when John Smith works at a guard, he actually gets because of maybe his experience, his seniority, he gets 15 an hour. So we could set that up for a specific person to get a little bit more. However, we could also set up that pay rule in just general as a guard position catch-all, would have just a single position set up for that 13 amount. Moving down to the actual amounts that we're seeing here was we're going to have the hourly rate as I'm assuming most of you are going to be familiar with, but then we also offer the option for fixed rate that we have here. So this would be the fixed rate, so the daily rate or then that entirety of the shift, that would be the lump sum that they would get paid. As mentioned, I believe with most of the clients that I have worked with, it's typically the hourly rate. Over here on the right-hand side, we're going to then have the conditions. So conditions are where we're definitely going to be varying between the as I mentioned, the standard packages and the more advanced packages with Parim. So with regards to a standard Parim subscription, the accesses that you're going to be having for payroll are just essentially what you're seeing right now. If you want to be more specific, which I will show you in a few moments, you're going to have to reach out to us, or you can also adjust your subscription yourself through the system settings and your subscription section here. And you can also upgrade to that next subscription. So any of the advanced settings that you would want to get and what are available within Parim are going to be these condition options here. So we're going to see those add conditions. We're going to be seeing shift hours. So this means that this rate itself would apply for the number hour. So from the first hour till the, say, 8th hour, the guard position would get 13 an hour. If they after the 8th hour, so you could say classify it as a daily overtime, from the 9th hour to the 24th hour, they would be getting 15 an hour or something. You could calculate exactly what time and a half would be. You could do that there. The other options are hours of the day. So this is going to be that specific actual clock hours. So from 1 a.m. or from 12 p.m., 4 p.m., etc. This would be typically used for, say, night shift rates that you could apply there. So if there is a guard that is working a night shift, they would get the additional amount per hours. You could put that entire sum per hour in there, and that could be applied. So you could add a large variety of those conditions within these pay rules. Additionally, we have age range, excuse me. So if there is any sort of particular regulations with regards to where you're operating and regards to age, then you can have those applied there. Simply set that age. This would take into account the age of the employee that is then ultimately assigned to that shift. Then we also have start time. So start time is going to be only when that shift starting from X amount of time or X time of the day, excuse me. And lastly, we're going to have days of the week. So I think the days of the week is typically what I've seen is going to go alongside the hours of the day, because there would be, as I mentioned before, hours of the day would be night shifts. So there's a standard rate for your Monday to Friday, but then there is additional rate from say 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. And then additionally, there's another rate for weekend shifts as well. So you can select those shifts. So say for Friday and Saturday is going to be 15. From Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is going to be 13. And then from Friday to Saturday, from let's say, where is it? From 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. would then be X amount, we'll say 16. We'll throw that one out there. So this allows you to be quite specific. In addition, you can also have it for who it applies to as well. So this would also apply to, I could essentially apply to any individual, and you can, again, being very specific, or you can be very broad depending on how you operate, how you have previously operated, or you will take this opportunity to utilize Parim's features and then build up your business because you're able to scale and be more precise with the pay rules. Excuse me. And then lastly, what I wanted to show you is we over here on the right-hand side is we do have payroll templates. So what pay templates are is you have the ability to set a standard. So if you wanted to, you have, based off of this, you have Monday through Friday for almost all your positions are going to be Monday through Friday at one rate, Saturday and Sunday at another rate, and then also additionally night times, etc., at another rate. You're going to be doing this for all your positions, but of course the monetary amount is different for each one. So rather than having to set all that we're seeing, all this up from scratch for every single payroll, potentially for every single employee, you have the ability to set up and select a pay template. To select a pay template, this would be in the same payroll section here. However, rather than clicking on the create payroll button there, we will select that drop down right there, and we go ahead and set that up. So we could then have the conditions if you're utilizing that, if you have that on your Parim subscription, and you can have all these things set up. All you would need to simply do is, of course, give it a name and save it, and then select that from that drop-down list. This is definitely going to be saving you some time, especially if you're in an organization that does have to do that minimum wage increase. That is every April, I believe, in the UK. So that is definitely going to be saving you a lot of time. Let's go ahead and go back to this, and we will go, and I'll just remove the person. We'll keep it very straightforward in a sense for just the guarded position, and we'll save and apply this. We do have some overlapping conditions. I'll just go ahead and just, for simplicity's sake, I will remove that. What do we see? Oh, and we'll do such as such. And by saving and applying, Parim, the system will recognize that there are shifts for guard position, and this would ultimately cause a change to them and the pay rate that is included. So it does give you that warning. So it's great that we're able to see that here. We'll go ahead and apply that as we want to. and that's been successful. Go ahead and refresh. And we would then have the pay rule under guard here, and we're seeing it right there as such. We have, we have the title, rule name over here. Certainly give your maybe a more unique name, say guard weekend, guard night shift, etc. Or you can give it if you're going to be specific with regards to the employee, you can then say John Smith guard position, etc. That being said, let's go into how we would then approach the situation. I sort of discussed earlier if we needed to either update the individual or that position's pay rate, whether it's for a pay increase because they've earned it, or it's due to the government mandated minimum wage increase. So one thing that I really want to bring attention to, and is what is very important that you do with regards to the pay rules and charge rules within Parim, is we do have the ability to delete pay rules. However, I would honestly highly recommend almost essentially never deleting a pay rule. The reason for this, and the reason I'm saying it and bringing so much attention, is that if we, as you saw here, when we saved that guard pay rule there, it was applied to some shifts. Those shifts, say if you're updating because of this minimum wage increase, you are having a year's worth of shifts that have had this pay rule applied to it. If we were to go in and either change the amount that we're seeing here from 15 to 17 or 18, etc., what that means is, especially where those effective dates, which I mentioned before, it would change all those previous shifts, pay information to the 17, the 18, etc. amount that you put in there, ultimately changing historical information. And this is why I also wanted to bring a little bit more attention to those effective dates. So as stated, if you additionally, if you delete that as well, same thing is you're actually going to be losing those pay rates for that year's worth of guard shifts. So again, emphasizing never delete, just change and bring back that effective date so no longer is effective or being applied to any shifts, such as the guard shift here. So you can simply, to modify these, you can simply go and click on the shift, or excuse me, the pay rule, go ahead and edit. But we also have a few other options down here. We have edit, rename, copy, and delete. So you do have that option to easily just quickly end that pay rule. So that's one way to do it. Otherwise, you can go ahead and edit it already. This allows you to change the effective dates, as you can see here, as well as adjust that pay rate that we're going to be doing. So we would change this to whatever that amount be, 15 to 17, 15 to 18, etc. That we're going in there. And then additionally, because it's already been set up, we can see that this is already going to be applied to 78 shifts, 76 which are open and 2 which are assigned. The open ones which are waiting to be assigned, your employees can always openly apply to them if that is enabled onto your system. And then of course the 2 that are already assigned, and those staff members are waiting to, clock in and clock out of that shift. One thing I want to show while we're on here, and one way that I have easily updated my clients' shifts, and without having to, one, enter all the information again, or even go over the using, which is a good feature, but the pay templates. One easy, quick way to do it is actually using the copy option here. We would then have this here, and we could say label it, think of it in the future, 2024 option. So it is that same pay rule. It's only been updated due to the necessary steps that have to be taken to increase that pay. And then boom, it's saved and applied. Okay, obviously we're running into discrepancies because I hadn't put in any effective dates. However, this would be your simple, easy, quick method to copy them and be able to proceed from there. All right. course, if necessary, if the pay rule was something that you simply just absolutely did not need, it was absolutely a total mistake, you do have the ability to delete the pay rule. That is also, you can select that from the three drop dots that we're seeing here as well. So it is ultimately available. There is no possible way to pull it out of the trash bin, undelete it. So do take that thought, do take that lightly. And I will show you what would happen if we do that. If I do click on delete, it is going to bring up that warning message again, saying what that pay rule is connected to, and ultimately asking you, do you want to do that? Do you want to continue with that change? However, I'm going to go ahead and just keep this on, as we want to keep that in for a good example. So now that we've gone ahead and set up that pay rule, the last thing that we have with regards to if you're setting up pay rules from scratch, or you simply want to make sure that your pay rules are being applied properly, in the right order, is we have pay and charge rule priorities. What this means is if you have a pay rule for a guard position, but then you also have a pay rule for John Smith and a guard position, or John Smith and a guard position at a particular location, and you have 3-4 pay rules that could possibly be applied, you would then wonder, okay, what would be the rate that would then be applied, because it is almost conflicting. You would want to set up that pay rule priority or charge rule priority, of course, in that case, and that could be done within the system settings. System settings are just on the little person icon in the top right corner under system settings. And then you'll want to go down to finance on this left-hand side there. Under finance, you're going to be then seeing those pay rule priorities and those charge rule priorities. This is honestly very straightforward in the sense that whatever goes on the top is what gets applied first. In the sense, it's going to be looking for position first. In this case, it's going to be looking for that there's a position such as guard. It will apply that first. If there is none, it's going to then check for a location pay rule. If there is none, it will move down to the next row. We would then have that option. A lot of my clients personally set it up with the person priority being first, because each of their staff typically would have their own unique pay rule and their own unique pay. Therefore, they want to make sure that's getting applied first before there is that sort of catch-all pay rule for, say, guard position, nurse position, doorman, etc. So they would typically have it in that such order. But essentially, you just need to, once you have your pay rules and your charge rules set up, you would just need to come into the system settings to make sure that they're being applied in the appropriate priority, and that the correct rate is going to be charged for that. Correct rate is going to be either charged for charge rules, or that pay is going to be paid out correctly or marked down correctly for your employees. So it's definitely one to check here. Again, simply need to drag and drop that option, and then go ahead and, of course, select your effective date, because that also is something that is linked to, you can also set this up for the future. So select that effective date, and then you go ahead, at which point you would be able to save that option. But essentially, that concludes the setup of the pay and charge rules. I will just quickly show you the charge rules itself. And you can definitely see that is essentially the same setup. So once you do figure out how to set up a charge rule, once you know how to set up a pay rule, you'll be good to go for both options. So what we want to do then now is go into the pay schedule and the different employment types. So with regards to pay schedule is going to be applied to your pay run. Pay schedule is how frequently your paychecks come out for your staff. Is it a weekly occurrence? Is it bi-weekly? Is it monthly, or etc.? So you would be wanting to set this up in its essence, pay schedule is going to be a live active filter that would be applied to the pay run. So you can see the current pay schedule and which shifts would be applied. So I'm going to be, like I said in the very beginning, I'm going to be talking about payroll and running through that in a few moments. But let's go ahead and just, especially if you're starting from scratch within Parim, you're going to be, before you're even able to look at the pay run and the pay run reports, you're going to be needing to set up a pay schedule. Pay schedules can be set up if you're starting from scratch. When you click on pay run, it's going to give you the entire setup process. However, it's already been set up in this on this site, so you would just need to go to the system settings again, and then you go on the left-hand side for Pay Manager. From here, you're going to be seeing the all the pay schedules that are currently set up on your system. By default, Parim will have a handful of these set up already, such as bi-weekly, monthly, weekly that we're seeing here. So you're going to be seeing a few that you can just easily select right off the bat. But let's go ahead and just create a pay schedule, and we'll start a brand new one. So you just need to click on Add a Pay Schedule. We'll give it a pay. We'll do, say, whoops. We'll do, whoops, 5th of the month. So this means that the pay would be, it would be essentially a monthly pay schedule. And then this would be on the 5th of the month at which the payroll would come out. So we're going to put the pay period as 1 month that we're saying here. We can have week or custom. We can select that by, we just want to keep it 1 month. We have the start day, we will put as the 5th. And then you also have the option to do it the last of the month. Very straightforward then. The reason we do have this is because, of course, not every month is 30 or not every month is 31 days. So the system will recognize this. And the pay schedule will be active from the 1st of the 1st of the month here, the year, excuse me. Go ahead and then save it. So now we have the 5th of the month option here. One thing that I do want to bring up is that you do now have to connect the pay schedule in order to get it to apply to your team, your employees. It does need to be applied to a particular employment type. I'm sure a lot of you might have a very easy, straightforward employment type, so all of your staff are standard. But in the case where some of you might have holiday staff or some of you have student staff, you might start labeling those employees as those type of employment types. So you would then need to connect that pay schedule, excuse me, to that employment type. In order to do that, you would just simply need to go over to the people setting over here and then click on employment type. At which point you have all the variety of employment types. We have one such as temporary staff. We'll go ahead and use that one as an example. You have all the type of, say, work rest rules, absence tracking, and then the main thing we're after here is going to be the pay schedule. Go ahead and select this, and we would then be able to select that pay schedule that we created. And this one's going to be 5th of the month there. Go ahead and select that, and in the bottom right, we go ahead and click Save. So now if we go back to our Pay Manager, and we're going to see that all of the temporary staff would be getting their payroll on the 5th of the month. So that concludes the creation of the pay schedule, and now we can get into the pay run and how you would be able to track and manage all your pay and charging for your staff and your employee or clients. So we have the pay run here from the drop down. Unfortunately, right now, since we just created that pay schedule, we're not going to be seeing very much information. So I'm just going to use this monthly one just for some simple data. Opening it up, we're going to see what we're seeing here is all shifts that have happened within that pay schedule. So this one has ended on the 9th, 10th being that end of the pay schedule. And those are the ones that have occurred during these are all the shifts that have occurred during that pay schedule. As I mentioned earlier, if you remember, The pay schedule is basically a live filter. So once this pay period has ended, this pay period will be updated for the October the 9th, etc. And you can be actively updating this list. So you don't have to, it would save you time. You don't have to be adjusting the filters so often. Once you're in here, then you have a variety of things that you can do. You can, of course, set up the columns on only showing the crucial information that you would need to see. You would have then the filters on the left-hand side to break down that information. If it's a particular position, if it's a particular location that you would only like to see, if it's a particular department, etc. We have, or if you're just simply doing a payroll, doing the payroll for a particular employee, you can select that person from the drop-down list that we're seeing here. And then, of course, there's a variety of other filters that we're going to be seeing. Then we have in the top as well is the grouping. So we can be able to see the persons and the types. So this is the breakdown that we're seeing, as well as person, the particular locations, the week, etc., or any sort of like unique pay rules if they're an individual that might have a few different pay rules applied to them. For simplicity's sake, let's go ahead and just simply put it by person. And then we also, what I want to bring out is once you've gotten to this point where, okay, we have our payroll set up, we have our employees that have completed those shifts. Now at which the point is we need to do payroll itself. So this would be in this case, we would be taking it out of Parim and then bringing it into your payroll software, such as Xero or whatnot. So you would want to be running through each of these shifts to make sure they're all good and ready to go. First off, what typically you would do is, because in this case we have approved timesheets applied, we would want to make sure that the timesheet is approved, in this case, 1 by the staff and then 2 by the admins, such as myself. So in this case, unfortunately, we're not seeing that has been applied yet, at which point you could then set up a process on who would need to be communicated with to make sure that gets approved of, and that it's all good to go. We aren't seeing any conflicts at the moment, but there would typically be a red dot right here if there was a conflict with that shift. So you do have that. You can then, of course, investigate further. And then if you, over here on the right-hand side, you have the ability to lock that shift and those shifts within them. Typically, what you would be doing if you've locked them is you would typically lock that line if you've already paid that out. So therefore, no adjustments could be made. Not only would you not, once it becomes locked, not only would you no longer be able to make any adjustments to this particular line, but there is no way to modify the original shift at which this is connected to. So we would, if we wanted to, we could easily go see that shift by simply clicking on the 3 dots to the right-hand side and then linking it to the timesheet. This brings us exactly to, in this case, Abram Smith's shift here. And we would not be able to adjust anything, as you're seeing. We would not be able to adjust anything that we're seeing down here because that's been locked and it's all good to go. And so that's just a quick way to easily access, especially as I mentioned, if there is a conflict here, at which point you could easily go to the shift and investigate further. One thing that you can also do is, I mentioned, is unfortunately at the moment there is no direct integration with a payroll software, or it's not being done within Parim at the moment. So you would be exporting the information and then importing it. To export it is extremely simple. Select the lines, in this case, select all of them. You do have the multiple options or the ability to mass lock them or remove the lock. And then if you're all good, you're good to go. You can go over to the export button right there. This is going to give you the ability to, of course, lock again if you want to. And then depending on how your software that you're using for payroll, how they desire the data, you can also have it grouped or singled out. And then, of course, select the export button. At which point you're good to go. Your employees are going to be getting paid through that software that you're using, and that becomes part of that process for maybe yourselves or the accounting department. Anyways, essentially that covers everything that we wanted to discuss with regards to your pay and charge within Parim. There is additionally invoicing reporting, but we are actually going to be including that in the next webinar. So certainly keep an eye out for that. And we will go into the in-depth on invoicing reporting and then additional reporting within Parim as well. So that's going to be part of that next webinar's topic. As I mentioned before, that concludes today's webinar. What I also want to mention is I can give a little bit of just a hint on what's coming into the future is we are going to be having overtime pay, excuse me, we are going to be having overtime pay rules. So I can't go into too much detail on how that's going to be operating or how that would be applied to the shifts, how they'd be applied, but we are definitely going to be doing and hosting a webinar to run and demo that for you. So do keep an eye out for that within the near future. But I do want to mention it as it's definitely relevant for the pay rules that we discussed today. I do hope that you all were able to learn at least one new thing. I hope after today's webinar, you're able to jump into the site and start making some pay rules, start making adjustments, or at least understand the system a little bit better. So I hope you enjoyed that. Right now, what we're going to be doing is myself and Alo are going to be answering some of the questions that you guys might have. So we're going to leave the webinar open for a few more minutes. Whenever you're using the pay rules, again, as I mentioned many times before, if you can't think of a question at the moment, don't feel bad. You can always reach out to our support team later on in the future, and they'll be happy to help. Again, you can use the support email, or in the bottom right corner is an easy messenger option to directly message our support team. They are very quick in responding to your inquiries, and if necessary, they can always assist you further into discussing your plan, subscription, whatnot, especially if that pay rule features if you're a bit limited, as you saw before in the webinar, if that's something that might apply to you and you're a little bit curious on getting those additional classifications, etc., then we'll be happy to discuss that within the chat. So I hope everyone learned something new, and I'm going to be sticking around to answer some of your questions as well. So feel free to ask them now while you have a chance. Otherwise, we look forward to talking to you through the support channels as well. Let me go and do that. And let's go ahead and answer some questions.